Okay. Sorry, I just have to get my stuff like organized really quick. So good morning. This is our 7th session of our 4-H orientation. And today we're going to talk about volunteer resources and 4-H opportunities within the national, state, pretty much national and state level. I do want to let you know that I'm going to go over some information about volunteer management resources, not necessarily our per se our procedures with volunteerism. That is something we are working on, so I want to get those finalized before I share those, but I want to give the staff some resources to go to when doing training for volunteers or just trying to figure out how to work with volunteers. So to start, I'm going to talk a little bit about volunteers in general. You know, the kind of that traditional volunteer is really, we know that volunteering has always been important in our community or in our country. It's been around for a long time. When we think of kind of that traditional volunteer, what most people think of, it's a middle-aged white female, middle to high income. They're typically married with children, and they typically did not work outside of the home. And what we're finding is today's volunteers are totally different. So when you look at today's volunteers, they are working full-time usually. They're male and female. They're white and non-white. They're all races. They're married and single. They're at any income level. What the big piece is we find that volunteers today don't have very minimal free time, but they still want to volunteer, and they are very careful about evaluating those volunteer assignments before they commit. We have a lot of times. I know we've been working on a state fundraising advisory group or fundraising committee for the 4-H camp. And every single one of them has asked Dr. Lyles for a copy of what are the responsibilities that they're going to have to fulfill. And, even myself, when I go to volunteer for an organization or volunteer with, even my son's sports programs, I want to know what is the time commitment and what is expected of me. And so those are things that we need to think about as we're working with volunteers moving forward. We also, African American volunteers are in greater numbers than ever before. And what's really interesting is minority groups are asked to volunteer less. However, they volunteer at a higher rate than the average population. So that tells us we need to be thinking about that. The majority of the volunteers are working people. And this is the one thing that drives me crazy so many times is when you get a volunteer group that is putting together, they have their meetings. We know that the majority of our volunteers are working people, but yet they have their meetings in the middle of the day when most people are working, or they just don't, it's whatever's convenient for that individual. We're also finding single people are showing significant increases in volunteering. The one thing that I saw when I was at the county level is I had more and more kind of that 20-something-year-olds, roughly, right out of college, but not married yet, just starting their career. They would come to 4-H, especially if they had been in 4-H as a young person and want to get involved in the program. What a great opportunity for them to do that. It is, and we need to be remembering about that. So the things about volunteers too, we're finding that volunteers tend to give more money to charity than non-volunteers, especially when you're doing a fundraising drive. You will usually get more money. I know my example is when my husband coaches football and I work with the business manager. I kind of serve as a team mom. It seems like we are always donating money to the team or to something. And, you know, it's because I feel like that's just part of my responsibility. 25% of all volunteers volunteer 5 or more hours per week, which, you know, we said that they have minimal time, but yet they're still volunteering 5 hours or more per week. And religious people who attend services are more generous with their volunteer time. That comes from the Gallup Association or Gallup organization, you know, and that's one of those, I've seen that in several different places. Within our extension volunteers, this is not just 4-H volunteers, but also our, you know, master gardeners and any of the other programs that we have that include volunteers. We know that they are the lifeblood of our organization. It says you cannot replace a volunteer. And what that means is not necessarily that you can't replace a volunteer. You can replace the person, but not the volunteer position. So I hope people understand that. So about 1 in 80 Americans have served in some sort of volunteer capacity within cooperative extension. It's about 2.9 million people. And what we found is volunteers invest 51 days for every 1 day that an extension professional invested in working with volunteers. So when you do training for volunteers, it shows that they invest about 51 more days to that 1 day of training. So that's, you know, that gives us real incentive for doing training with volunteers. It's the money. So every year, the independent sector, which is a website and a group that works with volunteers, they put out a cost, you know, a cost per hour, or basically it's like $20 an hour is what it would cost you to have that volunteer if you paid that volunteer. And so if you looked at that cost or that amount, it's about 5 times the entire cooperative extension budget. That's national. Think about how much that is. That's a lot of money, and we really, you know, they're important to us. And the community would pay about $4.5 billion for those services if they were to pay for those annually. So when you think about why people volunteer, yeah, okay, thanks. Based on the 5 hours per week, should we be computing volunteer time differently? I've used the 5 that, and you know, that's okay. I think I would like to, you know, some of those numbers I want to look at a little bit more. It would be interesting to see, you know, what our volunteers, you know, what volunteers are. I would say still the 10 hours a month. Kind of what I always went on was, you know, 1 hour a month for meetings, and then the time that they spend with the kids. So I think 10 hours a month is a good formula at this point. But it would be, you know, and I think that 5 hours a week, if I remember right, oh no, that was, which one was that? Yeah, this is all volunteers, this is all organizations. So that's not just extension. So that's why I would say go ahead and keep with the 10 hours per month. And at some point that might be something that we look at in the future to find out, you know, maybe have some kind of system to where we could track that a little bit better. Because sometimes I don't know if we track it the best that we could. So when you look at why people volunteer, you know, a lot of times they want to belong. They want to belong to an organization. They want to give back. You know, sometimes they need to complete their education. I know, you know, we get quite a few college students that want to volunteer, or even high school students that want to volunteer because they need it for their education to graduate. You get those individuals that like the recognition. You know, we've all had those volunteers that want to be in front of the group. They want to be the ones in charge. They like that recognition. They want to receive training, you know. I talked a little bit about it yesterday with the community service, but you think about, you know, a lot of young people volunteer with organizations or with different places so that they can receive specialized training or just get training or acquire skills. You know, I've thought about like Habitat for Humanity and volunteering there because I would gain some skills that I don't currently have and probably need for home ownership. You know, they like to be part of a team. They like to have fun. You know, that's whenever I think it's important that we make sure that volunteers are having fun. It is critical. They like to be part of problem solving. I'm a big one if there's a program or if there's something that happens in an organization that I don't necessarily agree with what's happening, I firmly believe that I need to be part of the solution of, you know, making things happen, differently and giving my suggestions without being, you know, I'm not going to just give my suggestions and not be willing to step up and help make the changes. And so you see that often, not as often as we should, but it is. They like to test out career possibilities. You know, again, I get a lot of students, or I have over the years, you know, that want to learn about extension and they want to find out what it's like to work for extension. So they'll come and do an internship with me. And I am happy to say of the probably 5 or 6 students I've had do internships with me, almost all of them have then gone on to become extension employees. So it's pretty cool. They like the work experience, making friends. We see this when you move to a new community. A lot of people will find the organization that they want to volunteer with so they can make friends and meet people. They want to use their own skills. You know, it's great when we have people that have certain skills that come into our organization. They want to develop leadership. That's another big one. And the number one reason why people volunteer is because they're asked to volunteer. And I will tell you, as you look at the different generations of around volunteering, it's really being shown that, especially those of us that are in the Gen X generation, we volunteer when we're asked. We don't necessarily, unless you're, you know, work for extension or work for an organization, you just volunteer. But Gen Xers tend to volunteer when they're asked to volunteer. I know at my own house, my husband does not, when, like in sports, he has to be asked to help coach the first time or, you know, do whatever. So it's, unless that happens, he's not gonna step up and volunteer. And he gets really cranky when his wife steps up and volunteers for him. But again, it's the way I think. So when you look at that kind of underlying philosophy of volunteer development and youth development and that, so we rely on and we thrive on the strong ethics of volunteerism. You know, we know that they are the success of our program. Quality youth development programming or positive youth development programming occurs in 4-H because we have a strong partnership with our dedicated volunteers. We really need to look at a comprehensive system that both for the management of our volunteer resources and then also our individuals that are participating in the 4-H program. So, and that's one of the things I know that the Adult Volunteerism Committee, we've been really looking at, we've been trying to clean up a few things with the application process and those pieces, but we're really starting to look at what can we, you know, as far as volunteer training, how can we develop a more comprehensive system that really is tied in statewide, you know, so that our volunteers are getting a lot of the same message. And then active preparation, the training, the involvement of the volunteers, and you know, that enhances the credibility and the integrity of the 4-H program. it also, the commitment to the youth and, to the youth adult partnership, I think that that's another critical piece that we need to look at. And we also need to recognize that volunteering is a two-way street. And this is probably where we start having, when we start having issues with volunteers, it's when there's not that recognition that it's a two-way street. Not only do we, as staff, we need to really work and work with our volunteers and give them the skills and the resources that they need, but again, they also need to, to watch our, or to pay attention to our directions and our guidance. And organizations like Cooperative Extension, we're recognized as a profession for our volunteer involvement. Most people know 4-H has volunteers, and so and they know when I was in Twin Falls County the first time I worked in Idaho. So when I first started my career, I had Girl Scouts come to me, I had the Boys and Girls Club come to me, and I had another organization come to me and ask for training on volunteer development. And, how do we put together our volunteer training? We're known for that. And so that's really important. So, there's a lot of research out there. I've seen a lot of research both in the Journal of Extension, the Journal of Youth Development. There's a journal on volunteer education, volunteer development. I can't remember that journal, but there's a lot of research out there that talks about volunteer program managers and the importance of that. The other piece I want to point out in the 4-H PRKC, the Professional Research Knowledge and Competencies document, there's really good, the volunteerism section is very good, and it gives those competencies that 4-H professionals should have around the area of volunteerism. And so I think it's important to go back and review that. There's four resources that I want to share with you that I think, there's lots more, but these four I think are probably some of the better resources to understand volunteer management, volunteer development area. So the four that I'm going to talk about is the Aissatou model. And the reason I'm going to talk about the Aissatou model is because it's not necessarily the only thing that we need to be focused on, but I think it gives us a good overview of what we can be doing as far as a structure for our volunteer program. Then there's the National 4-H Learning Priorities around volunteerism. This document and this framework has really not been utilized, I don't think, to the best of its ability. There's some really good stuff in it, and I want to share that with you so you're aware of it as well. I know we've been talking a lot about it in the area of professional development. When our staff want more resources on how to get stronger on volunteer development, that is a great document. And then, I've mentioned the PRKC. Well, there's also a VRKC, which is the Volunteer Research Knowledge and Competencies. And I'm going to share that with you because not only is it, it's a good overview, but it also, what I love about it is there are competencies that volunteers should have in order to be successful within the 4-H program. But what's really nice is there are lesson plans that go along with all of those competencies. So if you see that volunteers are struggling with maybe communication, and maybe it's nonverbal communication. If you have volunteers sitting at your 4-H council meetings like this the whole time and just a scowl on their face, you can kind of see that nonverbal communication is lacking. Positive nonverbal communication. And so there's lesson plans. So you could do a 15-minute training with volunteers to understand what that is. And so I want to share that. And then there's some really good resources on the National 4-H website, 4h.org, around volunteer development. And so I want to show those to you and share those with you. In fact, I was on, or I'm working with the PRKC, as everybody knows. I've been part of the revision of that. And one of the things we're trying to do with that is for each of the domains, we're trying to give our staff places that they can go to get additional training. And I was on a Zoom session one day with some of the top people in the country around some of these areas. And we were on the National 4-H website and did not even realize what all was on there. We were like, oh my gosh, I didn't know, so it was pretty enlightening for me as well. So I have to remember to go and do that all the time. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Aissatou. And you probably were wondering why I was like, where Aissatou came from. So it's just acronym for identify, select, orientation, training, utilization, recognition, and evaluation. And I have got in the box file, which I have the email ready to go. As soon as I get done with this session, I'm going to be changing or I'll be getting the file converted, and then I will get that sent out for the last 3 sessions. But there's a document in here that really goes into detail about Aissatou. It's got a lot of just basic information that, and it's all written out in a kind of a one-pager. So the first one is identify. So really, I think the key, and we don't do this as often as we should, one of the things I would love for us to do in Nevada is to have, I know that, I know a lot of people have them, but we just need to collect them. But I would love for us to have sample job descriptions for what is a organizational leader, what is a project leader, what is sample job descriptions for a camp chaperone, for a national trip chaperone, for there's a fair board or a fair volunteer. I mean, there's so many out there, so many opportunities, and so we could talk about so we could have those samples up there so that it's not so hard to do that. Really, our volunteers should always be given a job description. The other thing about that is when you think about the risk management and you think about if something were to happen and a person was hurt under that volunteer's watch, I say it all the time, if they're working within the scope of their job description, then everything's okay. The university is going to support them. If they're doing something outside the scope of their job description, then they're not. And that's where, if there's no job description, it's hard to say whether they were working in or out of that job description. So things that should be included, though, things like the title, the general purpose or the benefits, what skills they need to have, if there's specific responsibilities, what you're expecting the results to be, what resources they have, who supervises that volunteer, the location, and then the time involved. That's probably the one that they ask the most, how much time is this going to take? And so I think that is, and that doesn't have to be all of those, but those are examples. Then you look at the selection of our volunteers. So we want to select the best qualified individual for that opportunity. Not everybody is designed to work with kids. Not everybody is designed to be a 4-H volunteer. And that's okay. We don't have to take somebody just because they're a warm body. I've had a couple of instances of it just didn't feel right. The person came to me and wanted to volunteer, didn't really know what they wanted to do. We tried to find a place for them. We just couldn't, something wasn't feeling right about them. And, we worked through the process, but, we don't, and I didn't accept a couple of them. Again, there was just something, and that's okay. Again, we don't have to take somebody just because they're a warm body. And then, we know that there's a stiff competition for volunteers. people are asked to volunteer. You know, right now I can volunteer at Cody's school. I can volunteer with, well, I can't do baseball anymore, but I used to volunteer with baseball. You know, there's other, you know, we could volunteer with 4-H. We could volunteer with, you know, there's other groups that he could be in that, you know, all of them need volunteers. And so there is that stiff competition. When you look at recruitment efforts, you know, the biggest thing is to ask. You know, don't recruit, and the key, one of the things, don't recruit somebody unless you know what you need and you can explain that to that person, what they're going to be doing. You know, sometimes I will jump the gun and recruit people and I'm like, I have no idea what you're going to be doing, but we're going to make it up as we go along. And that gets frustrating for me, and it gets frustrating for the volunteer. So you want to try not to do that. You need to determine if that potential volunteer has the skills and interests to do the job. Again, you know, that is really important. Probably the biggest thing, and I just realized that I have the wrong name in here because I didn't double check this morning. But so you want to make sure that you are following our correct screening procedures. Those are on the Nevada 4-H Policies and Procedures site. We can, you know, if you ever have any questions, you can contact, it's not Stephanie Neal, it is, is it Alyssa, Sarah? Or no, it's, Alyssa is just for Washoe County, I believe. I've got to figure out who's all doing what in the northern area now that things have changed. But Paul, if you're in the southern area, then you contact Paul Lessick. He is in the Clark County office. They can help walk you through that, but I will let you know that the Adult Volunteerism Committee, our state committee, is working on a procedure for the volunteer application. So that way, and we're trying to get everything, you know, everybody using the same application, everybody using the same reference forms, everybody using the same procedures for fingerprinting, for all of the different pieces to that volunteer application. I think it's really important that that happens. And so we were working on it. I think we're going to finalize it. I think we decided we're going to finalize it at our June meeting, then to go to policies and procedures to be approved. So that will be shoring up a little bit more, and you're going to have a document that will give you the kind of those step-by-step procedures. So then you look at the orientation of our volunteers, and this is a really critical piece. Not only is it, should it be done, you know, with the self-study guide or the take-home self-study guide, but it needs to be some other areas. It's going to help, especially if you have a volunteer that's not familiar with 4-H, and we get a lot of those. It's amazing how many we get. So you want to start that. One of the other pieces of the Adult Volunteerism Committee has decided to take on is figuring out what, for the orientation of new volunteers, what are pieces that every single county should be teaching. And so then there will be guidelines, and we haven't worked out all those details yet, but we really want to make sure that that is a piece of what what people are looking at, because we want to make sure that our volunteers are all getting the same information as well. And there's a variety of ways to do that. So there's a general session or meeting, and I know Sandy's done some orientation sessions that are more like a group setting. When I was in the county, I used to do them quarterly. So I would have quarterly new volunteer orientation. I would go over, you know, our policies and procedures. I'd go over child protection. I'd go over just a whole variety of things. So that's a good way. It also gets them to know other volunteers. I also think it's important to do one-on-one orientation with volunteers. When I was in Idaho the first time, I don't believe they do it anymore, but when I was there, before, we were required to do an interview with all volunteers. And, that gave me an opportunity to sit down one-on-one with that volunteer and really have that discussion. And I think that's really important as well. Then there's the self-directed or the take-home lesson. So I know right now our child protection child protection training is a self-study guide that they take home, they complete and bring back to the county, and then the county should be sitting down with that individual and visiting about that to make sure that they really did read it and they just didn't go through and sign. The other piece for the one-on-one that is happening, that is the whole workday, where we're having to put people into workday. That's changing things because we really need to do a sit-down one-on-one with those volunteers to get that done. And so, again, those procedures, we're still working on the kinks in those procedures. We've got quite a few counties that are out. I would call it pilot testing, even though it's supposed to be happening. We're still trying to get all of that put together. Yes, it's very frustrating workday, I know, and that's why we're trying to make those procedures a little bit easier for everybody. The other one that's going to be coming out is there are some, if you were familiar with, we did have a set of online modules that were available from the Western region that we would ask volunteers to go through and complete. And it's a great thing for volunteers to do in between when they turn in their packets and we're waiting for their fingerprints to come back. And those modules have been updated and they are going to be available. It's just we're trying to work out the process to get them into e-extension. That right now, that is the only platform that we're able to put them in and be able to track if they completed the modules. If I can figure out a way, I think that's what we're going to start with. It's not my preference. It's not a lot of people's preference, but we can't do it in 4-H online at this point. The files aren't in the right system, and it's going to cost, I can't remember how much they said it was going to cost to do that, but it's very cost prohibitive for us to do it, as well as 4-H Online is going to start charging us if we have trainings that are in their system, and it's like $5 a member or $5 a volunteer or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was just absolutely out of it. That would have been my entire state budget. So I was like, well, that's not going to happen. So we're looking at those, so there's online, there's, a group, there's one-on-one, and then there's self-directed. So there's lots of ways that we can get orientation done. Then, not only do we need to orient our volunteers, but we need to continue to do training for those volunteers. Some counties do yearly training. Some counties do, quarterly trainings. I've also seen it if you have a leaders council or a group, I've seen it to where the first half an hour of the leaders council meeting is training. And you do it in the beginning instead of at the end, because in the end, they're worn out and they usually leave. But you do it in the beginning. You do about a half an hour. You can pull one of those VRKC lesson plans and do a training on it. It works really well. And sometimes I've seen it to where if you have that and if you offer maybe food of some kind at your council meeting, along with that, I've seen leaders council numbers go up. And I really, that's one way to reach volunteers. You can, because you're wanting them to always develop and to get better at what they're doing. And so you can, there's those 3 levels. There's a pre-job, that's the orientation. There's the on-the-job. Maybe that is, maybe they're learning something as they're going. And then there's also the continuing education. And that's really where we kind of play in. We've also been trying to think about statewide training opportunities for volunteers. We tried to do the state leaders forum. For whatever reason, it didn't go this year, and so we're rethinking that, and it looks like probably this fall we're going to be doing a statewide tour, doing training. We'll have specific topics, and we'll just go to the different locations, probably 5 or 6 locations across the state, and do training. And those will be evening trainings. And then, looking to the future, depending on how we go with state contests and those kinds of things, there's a real possibility that we might, if we go with an expo model, what I would love to do is be able to offer workshops during that. So volunteers could then go to some leadership, to go to some training while they're there, and also our team leaders. So just trying to look at all of those options for us, because I think it's really important. I haven't focused, I know, some people have asked why I haven't focused on the volunteers and since I started, and I said, right now I had to get our staff kind of on board with things, and now I think we need to move on and really engage our volunteers and get them involved again. The utilization. So we need to make sure that we're putting our volunteers to work. So many times, and this, I'm guilty of this just as much as the next person, where we have somebody come in to volunteer, and we might not have a specific club or a specific, something for them to do right at that moment. But, we need to find that soon. And so, making sure they're in the right job, for the right, the right person for the right job with the right preparation, that we delegate, we're giving them authority and guidance to do the job, that we're following up with them, maybe, those regular trainings and those updates. And then that there's a communication, that it's ongoing, and we have a two-way communication with those volunteers. And so other pieces with utilization, good supervisors of volunteers have to understand what motivates all of our volunteers. When you think about volunteers that have high social needs, they should not be put in isolated conditions. And, I've seen that. We need to recognize that. Volunteers that want recognition should receive it, whether it's a handwritten thank you note, or it's an article in the newspaper, or just, at a leaders council meeting or in the newsletter, do a quick shout out. And, volunteers who want to be in front of a group, if again, it's the right person for the right job with the right preparation, put them in front of the group. That's what they want. Have them do it. We know volunteers can always leave. That's okay. It's okay to also let a volunteer go that maybe isn't the right fit for our organization. Then we have our recognition. So I think that this is one piece. We need to, really take the time for recognition. Not all volunteers like formal recognition or public recognition, but just a, hey, I think you're doing a good job. So really, recognizing their contributions to the organization, that's essential. It can be formal and tangible. They could get a plaque, they could get, a jacket, they could get something, or it could be informal and intangible. Again, a handwritten thank you note. Recognition should be ongoing. We shouldn't just do it once a year. If you have things that are happening, you should be recognizing people. And, more volunteers that are recognized for their contributions are more likely to stay with the organization. They feel appreciated. They feel like they're making a difference. And then evaluation. So you think about evaluation, and we don't always think about, formal evaluation of volunteers, but I think it's really important that we do. We need to sit down with volunteers and go over, what are things that are working, what are things that are not working. They need to get feedback on the quality of their work, and then, it should be that we are, maybe as paid staff, or, you can also put in a middle manager as a volunteer middle manager who kind of is the volunteer or volunteer coordinator, that type of thing. But, you know, that you should be evaluating them. And then also, you know, they should be allowed to give feedback. This is where it gets a little bit sticky, because so many times our volunteers, especially in 4-H, and we have those very passionate, longtime volunteers, and they think that they should have the ability to evaluate the paid staff, and they should be able to get the paid staff fired or hired or whatever, or in trouble. And that's not necessarily the case. They need to be able to give feedback, but, you know, they need to understand that they are not the ones that supervise the, you know, our staff. And so I think, you know, trying to find that balance is really important. Okay, any questions on the Aissatou model? It is, to me, it's helpful to just kind of think about the pieces that we need to look at. Okay, the next one that I'm going to talk about is the learning priorities. And these are it's called the volunteerism for the next generation. And I'm actually going to share with you, I just have to find it. Oh, the other piece with the Aissatou model that I'm going to share with you. Can you guys see the Let's Measure Up document that's on the screen now? Okay, thank you. And Sarah just reminded me, so Aissatou, if you have so there might be a curriculum in your office, and I, of course, don't have it in here right now. I need to go steal that from the other, from our storage area and bring it into my office. There is a curriculum called Taxi, and it's a blue box, and it's got a yellow taxi on it. It's yellow and red and green, and, you know, but it's a blue box, and it says Taxi. Aissatou is in the taxi curriculum. That's an older curriculum, but still very, 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 very relevant and very, very good. Unfortunately, though, we still can't get it, or we can't get it anymore. So if you have a copy of it, hang on to it. It's another great resource to be able to pull lessons from. But this document, I really like this document about working with volunteers, you know, kind of that evaluating your volunteer program. And this is something that you could do maybe once a year, just to evaluate where you think your volunteer program is and where you think you could do more, you know, or where you could make improvements. So this is in one of the documents that I'm going to be sharing with you. And so I just want, but it follows the line of the VRKC, all of these, Aissatou, all of them. So it's like I said, it's a really, you know, I like this document. Okay, so I also wanted to share the framework just so you can see that. Let's see. So this is a national framework on volunteerism. This is one that was put together a few years ago, but still very relevant. Sorry, I'm kind of going through. And again, these are all part of the handouts that I'm going to be sharing with you. So it's got, this is 10 pages. This is really kind of those pieces. So that's one. The one that I wanted to share more is the volunteer rubric. So this is what I'm going to talk about. Oops. Okay. Okay, there we go. So this is the learning priorities. It's a knowledge and skill rubric. So really the priority for this document is to help 4-H professionals to be able to create and maintain that local volunteer delivery system. There's both volunteer development and volunteer management within this document. So you can see it was put together by, if you are familiar with any of these names, Sue's now retired and Sherry's now retired, but Ken Kolb is a volunteer specialist out of Kentucky. He's one of the main authors of the VRKC and is pretty well known for his research around volunteerism. Jana Ferris is a county educator in Seattle area in Washington, and Janet Fox is the associate state leader in Louisiana. You know, Doug Swanson is actually program leader at National 4-H Council, or I'm sorry, program leader at USDA at the 4-H National Headquarters, in charge of volunteer development and professional development. So, you know, you can see that these individuals knew what they were doing. So that's one of the reasons why I kind of take it to heart. So I'm just going to scroll down really fast. You're not going to, I know it's going to be really weird, but okay. So this is what it looks like. So essentially, you're going to do a self-assessment, and you are going to decide in these areas, are you a novice, are you a practitioner, or are you an expert? And within that, you're going to decide, this one is developing and implementing an infrastructure. So you're going to think about, if I were to define volunteerism and how volunteerism is critical to our 4-H program, do I feel like I'm novice? Do I understand? Do I have a level? Do I understand it? I know it exists. Am I engaged in the application? You know, can I really explain that to somebody? And then with the expert level, it's, are you actually teaching those topics? And so from there, so you do the self-assessment, and then here it goes into some resources that you have. So if you felt like you were on a novice level for this, for that topic, for the defining volunteerism, here's a really good book that you could read. There's not only books, but there's trainings and there's websites and there's a variety of things that you could be using. And so, and then at the practitioner level, here's that resource. So that's what that looks like. So to kind of go back to the PowerPoint, it's to share with you kind of what those topics are and the components. So you've got that developing that infrastructure, that personal readiness, and a lot of these go right along with our PRKC, our professional within the volunteerism domain. So are you sharing, you know, do you have a personal readiness? Do you understand those trends in volunteerism? Do you advocate for volunteerism? And then is your organization ready? And this is one of those, you know, I would think of it as, is your county ready? Because, you know, when you look at this, are you able to identify volunteer needs? Are you able to develop volunteer positions? You know, not every county, especially with a new staff person, they may not be quite there. They may have those needs and those positions, but are you, you know, can you also identify what those are? And then there's engagement of volunteers. There's the education of the volunteers. There's, you know, I like the managing risk for volunteer delivery systems. Sustainability of volunteers. And then the review and analyzation of, you know, when you analyze the volunteer delivery system. So, you know, those are the kind of those topics that are involved. And then within that rubric, so you have the self-assessment, you have resources, there's reading activity, and then there's activities, and then there's learning activities. And so, you know, to really, those, like I said, those are good resources if you're looking to do your own training, is, you know, to do your own self-awareness and training. I did a brief overview of that. You know, it's hard to go into detail until, you know, if you want to use that, fantastic. I think that's a good resource for us. Any questions on that topic? Okay. So on the VRKC, there are, I believe, six domains on that. I'm going to talk about each of those, and then I'm going to show you an example of a lesson plan for that system. So the VRKC taxonomy is, there's 6 domains within it. They're communication, organization, the 4-H program management, educational design and delivery, positive youth development, and interpersonal characteristics. And now these are not designed, well, they can be used with staff. I've used them with staff, but they're really designed to help our volunteers understand these topics. So within the communications domain, this is really the volunteers are able to create, deliver, and interpret information through formal and non-formal means. So there's lesson plans on speaking skills, on listening skills, on writing skills, nonverbal, information delivery and dissemination, marketing and public relations, and then the use of technology. They've got, resources for all of those. Within the organization, how can they be organized so, that they have the ability to engage others? So things on planning and organizing, time management, the parental recruitment and involvement. How do we get parents involved? How do we delegate tasks to parents? That service to community, and then again, the marketing and publicity, because that really falls in that domain as well. Then you have the 4-H program management. So this is that they understand the appropriate, and follow the appropriate policies and procedures and safety guidelines. So, there's a lesson on the organization and structure of 4-H. There's upholding the 4-H mission. Liability, there's that risk management piece. There's club management, behavior management, record keeping, financial management, and computer skills. All things that can help a volunteer. The educational design and delivery. Again, if you've got a volunteer that's teaching, and, even if they're using our 4-H curriculum, they need to have the basic understanding of these topics. So using age-appropriate activities, the utilization of multiple teaching strategies. We know that when I went through my teacher ed prep work, they told me that I needed to switch my teaching method every 7 minutes. And that's a lot, so you don't lecture for 7 minutes, you don't do a hands-on activity, you need to switch it up. And so it's how to do that. Understanding the difference in learning styles, knowledge of subject matter, you can see all of those. And then positive youth development. I think that, this is one that I think is really important for us to be teaching to our volunteers, so they know what the theory and the basis behind 4-H is and what our goal is. Our goal is not to get a project to the fair, but our goal is to have those youth gain, have a positive experience and gain life skills. So again, those are the topics. And then the interpersonal characteristics, what are some things that caring for others, you don't think you should have to do a lesson on care for others or compassion or acceptance or those types of things, but it's amazing how often you have to do that. I know I was asked to come to a county here in Nevada and I did the lesson on honesty, ethics, and morality for all of the club officers. So you can use them with your teen leaders as well as your adult leaders, but I just thought that was a really interesting topic to do, especially for club officers. And you know what, it went over great and they saw some changes. And so, it's just one of those things you may have to do. So to show you the lesson plan, this is what I love about it, is the lesson plans are right there. Okay, I move this over. Okay, sorry, can you guys see that? The taxonomy, the lesson plan, okay, thank you. I never know if sometimes it won't do it, but this is the lesson plan for each one of those topics that I shared with you. So this one happens to be just an overview of what the VRKC is. So you can see it gives you everything, you know, it's a typical lesson plan. Gives you everything that you need. What supplies you need, how much time it's going to take, and then it gives you the activities. There are PowerPoint slides that go along with each one of these lesson plans. So you have a PowerPoint that goes along with them. It tells you exactly what you need. Again, you know, and do reflect, apply, reflect and apply. You've got it. It also gives you an evaluation tool to use. You know, just such a great resource for us. And I'm going to show you the next slide in our PowerPoint is, well, here is the actual lesson plans. And so you know, I'm going to show you when I get to the website what this looks like. So then I showed you the national framework. I'm not going to talk a lot about this one, but you can just see those areas, you know, that it talks about what a framework for a volunteer program should look like. And again, so I'm going to take you to I'm going to stop sharing this for just a minute, and I'm going to pull up the national website. I have it pulled up, I just have to get it on my screen. So to go to the national, to go to 4h.org, if you have not gone to 4h.org yet, do so, because it's very, very beneficial. There's tons of information there. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to get the chat box back up so I can see what you guys are saying. So on this is under 4-H professionals, and then you go to professional resources, professional development, and volunteer development. So you're going to go to this page, and you may, oh, no, I guess you don't have to. You may have to log in. So you may have to create a username and password to get into this site. Do it. It'll be very beneficial. And you can see there's stuff on youth development, volunteer development, science resources, logic models. That's something some of you have never heard that term. If you ever want to learn about them, we can have a long conversation about logic models. It's a way to plan programs, etc. There's webinars that have previously happened. There's a Latino youth outreach kit within this section. What I'm going to do is go to the volunteer development piece. Within this piece, you've got volunteer engagement and recruitment. So they've got some, I haven't even looked at what these are. Okay, so this is a PowerPoint that they did on volunteer recruitment and intention. It must have been a presentation that they did at one time, and a project that they did. Oh, I want to go. Okay, so I want to go back. So here's where the resources are. Yeah, you have to log in. So everyone ready. So this is something that happened years ago. I can't even tell you how many years ago it was now. It was a 3-year project that that National 4-H Council had received money for. It was a 3-year kind of professional development around volunteerism. Great resources. It's, now it's been archived. It's available for you to go in. And so here is building a foundation for volunteer involvement. This would have been the lesson on that topic. My computer just wants to not pull it up. And I don't know where it just pulled it up. Nope. Okay, I don't know where it pulled it up. Open. Allow it. Oh, okay, it's pulling it over here, because what it does is then pulls a file folder over for you. So I'm pulling up the document. So this was the lesson essentially on that. Again, I don't know a ton about this one. I know there are some really, really good resources in there about volunteerism. So, it's worth going in and looking at, especially if you're just going in and if you're looking at the topics. Yeah, Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that you attended those, Sharon. They were really good. I wasn't able to do it. What they did is one month they would do a webinar, the next month would be a self-study or by, somewhere in there. So highly recommend going in and doing those, or at least looking at them. You can see all of the topics. Again, it was 3 years for like every month or every other month or something. So there's a lot of stuff in there. You have a fact sheet series. So again, this is where the Aissatou model is. There's the PRKC domain. I don't know how up to date that one is since that just changed. All of these pieces. So this is where that let's measure up the criteria for evaluating. Let's just sharing and selling the vision. Let's look at this one. So this is just a 2-page fact sheet about sharing and selling the vision of 4-H and volunteer development. So again, just some resources for you. The VRKC model and the lesson plan. So this is where it is. So here you've got the communications overview lesson plan and the PowerPoint. You've got a speaking skills lesson plan and a PowerPoint. That is what is so wonderful. It's all here for you. So you can pull those up at any time and use those, like I said, these are great to use before a leaders council meeting. And then last year, in 2017, I don't know, most of you, I think everybody was on board at that point. In the fall, they did what they called a volunteer e-forum. And so they had 3 different sessions. They had one in October, one in November, and one in December. And those were great webinars. So the 3 topics were cultivating an environment for growing true leaders, stemming into livestock, so talking about the STEM aspect of livestock, and then helping 4-H'ers grow in life and work. And so you can go on and watch those webinars still, and you could, if you wanted to do one of those at a training, you could still pull those up for volunteers to watch. And then they have the PowerPoint, the handouts. This would be all of these handouts combined. So you've got all of these resources here for volunteer training. So if you have, it looks like there's activities for you to do, all kinds of stuff. So, again, these are all here on the website, on the 4h.org website. We just don't always remember that this exists. And so or you may not have known that it exists. And so I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of this resource. And I do have the link in the PowerPoint. So are there any questions regarding this website? I mean, there's lots of other stuff on the website, but I wanted to specifically to target the volunteer development piece. Okay. And again, there's also the taxi, if you've got a copy of that. There's quite a few resources out there. These were ones that I found throughout my career. I just feel are some of the better resources. Okay. All right, for the last kind of half an hour, may not take a half an hour, but what I want to share with you is these are some opportunities that we have within 4-H that I want to make people aware of. Now, as we're doing this, I know we've got Sharon, we've got Sarah, we've got Sandy on here. As we're looking at these, I want you to, if you can think of others that I missed, please let me know and share those as well. I think it is, okay. I think, because I was trying to go through and think of all of the opportunities that we have, and I know I've probably missed some. So let me know, and then that way too, I can put those in my reiteration of the slide, and I can put those in the slideshow before I advertise it out over Nevada Box, over the Nevada Box. So we're going to start with the one thing I didn't put in here because we do not currently have a program. It's something that eventually I would like to get going again, but right now we just don't have the capacity. I don't feel like I'd like to get it, is an international opportunity. So there are opportunities, but if we do have young people that are interested in traveling to Japan, or if we have families interested in hosting Japanese students through the Labo program, we can get families connected with other states. I know we've actually since I've been here, I think we've had at least one family that actually did end up hosting a Japanese Labo student, and we just coordinated that through Idaho. They had a couple students that they had to get placed, and we ended up having a couple of families like in the Elko area that were interested in hosting. I know Sarah has gone to Ghana on an international program that is run through Wyoming. So we do have some opportunities. I just didn't put them in here because we don't have a formal program in that. But it is something, if you have kids that are interested, there's programs to go to Australia, to Belize, to Norway, to Finland, I'm trying to think of, there was one in Poland. I'm not sure if that one still exists. There to go down to South America, to some South America countries. I mean, there's just a ton of opportunities for us, and so we can do that. But to look at our national opportunities, so the program was Associated State Department. Yeah. Oh, okay. And we're still trying to. Yeah. There's also the IFE program, which is the internet. Oh gosh, now I can't remember what IFE stands for, but essentially it's for college age students. And so we can, again, if anybody ever asks you about it, just have them call me and I'll talk to them about it. So the one National 4-H Congress, we have not sent young people to Congress for the last, I don't know how many years, but we do want to send young people to National 4-H Congress. And we are going to have an application process for that. Those applications are going to be due in July, and those will be coming out in the very near future. We were just finalizing them the other day. So that is, it's really designed to recognize and promote excellence in the 4-H program. I will say that Congress is really focused around community service, and it's for them to go and have a good time. And I know the National Congress Planning Committee, or the design team, is really looking at what that focus is and trying to do some changes to it, but it is still a great program. For those of you that were 4-Hers, maybe, 4-Hers back in the day, if you remember, 4-H Club Congress was always held in Chicago, and it was an awards trip. So, JCPenney would sponsor, one youth from every state that would had the best sewing project, or had the best whatever the project was. That is no longer the case. That changed in about 95, I think, is roughly about when they switched that. And now it is more that community service focus. It is held in Atlanta, Georgia every year. It's usually late November, early December. Typically, our young people have to travel out, especially for us. They have to travel on Thanksgiving Day, and then they get home, then it runs through, I think, Tuesday. The dates for this year are November 23rd through the 27th. The delegates must be 14 as of January 1st, and that would be for 2018. Year. And the cost for that is about between $1,200 and $1,600. Currently, I'm still trying to figure out how we can support those individuals from the state level. I'm trying to work on that, but if you've got county dollars to help them, we will coordinate their trip from the state office. But so that is an opportunity this year that we are going to bring back for sure. Then there's National 4-H Conference, which is conducted under the leadership of USDA. The one thing I will say about Congress is they have a separate design team. It's made up of state program leaders, of volunteers, and youth. It is a separate entity, but under guidance of National Council and 4-H. They're not like rogue and on their own, but they do have a separate design team. National 4-H Conference is conducted under the leadership of USDA. They are the ones that plan it and conduct it. It's held in DC. Our delegates stay at the National 4-H Center in Chevy Chase. It's really designed to give the delegates a more meaningful involvement and representation of the 4-H program. So what they do now, this has changed in the last probably 5 or 6 years, I think. Our delegates select a track to go in. They work with a college facilitator, and that team creates a presentation around issues and different things around that issue. So last year we had one of our youth was on, I can't remember what the topic was, but they got to go to the FBI, and what they do is then they have that topic, and then they go to the federal agency that deals with that issue, and they give a presentation to that group, to that agency. It is, there's ag, there's social, one group did mental health, and they went to Health and Human Services. So it's not just USDA, but they're actually going across the board. Some of them go to Department of Defense, some of them go to the FBI, some go to Health and Human Services. It's a really, really great opportunity. We have gotten such good feedback. Okay. So when Diamond went, she's in the small business development group, and I can't remember which agency they went. I think they might have gone to, I can't remember what agency, but yeah, they do. They're in all different groups. And I always try to make sure, it sounds funny, but I try to make sure that our Nevada delegates are in different groups, so that we get a variety of they get those variety of experiences. And sometimes I will try to put our adult chaperones in with a different group as well, so that way we get those. I think it's a great way. I personally think that it has made a huge difference in the impact that we're making within conference. I know I went one year, and it's really good, but I think this gives the kids feel like they have a voice, and they get that experience. We do get a chance while they're there to visit with our legislators, with our federal legislators, and they do get to tour. We always set up a tour of the Capitol with one of the offices, and usually they get that behind the scenes tour. They do have to be at least 14 to attend. It's usually late March, early April. It just depends on the year. In 2019, those dates are April 6th through the 11th. The cost for that, again, is about between $1,200 and $1,600, but it's well worth the investment to go. And applications will be due for that November 15th. So that way we can get that. Okay. So she actually she met a girl at CSI recently who was in her group. That is fantastic. They do kind of make that bond. We need to look at Diamond too. Maybe she needs to apply to be a college facilitator for that. Those roundtable groups are facilitated by college students. And so that is, that's another great experience for them. And I'm going to talk about that too. Then we have Citizenship Washington Focus. So this is really a week-long citizenship event that happens throughout the summer. There's different weeks that our young people go, that they can go. They explore current issues. They find out, how kind of that federal level works. And again, they learn about the history. There's lots and lots of tours that they go on. We always tell parents, or I always tell parents that if you want the kids to learn leadership skills, they need to go to conference, because National 4-H Conference, they get to do a little bit of touring of Washington, D.C., but if you want them to see a lot of Washington, D.C., Citizenship Washington Focus is the one for them to go. They get to go to the monuments. They get to go do those things where they don't have a lot of time when they're back there for conference. So we tend in Nevada to send our delegates the week of July 4th. What a great experience for them to be in the nation's capital on the 4th of July. So that's why we tend to send them that week. So again, the cost for that is about $1,500 to $2,000. It is a little bit more expensive of a trip. I think the registration fee for that is almost $1,000, but that includes a lot of stuff. And so, and that includes a couple of extra days that they go back and because we can't necessarily get there in time, and it gives them a couple extra days to go see some things that they wouldn't get to see. For those, we do send out the information usually in December, January timeframe. We do ask that an initial deposit is sent by March. The next year it'll be March 1st, and that we ask that the remaining balance is due by May 1st. The reason for that is we have to pay for that ahead of time. We don't just have to get a deposit, and then and then that way everything is covered. Now, because we have a situation right now, we had a family we had a parent and child that we're going to go to the next one I'm going to talk about, the Leadership Washington Focus, this coming summer. And they just called or emailed and said, oh, we can't afford to go now. And we didn't require a deposit this year. And now and we paid for them because they said, oh yeah, we're going. They filled out all the paperwork, and now they've come back and said, oh, we can't afford it. And so now we've got 2 spots, and we're trying to get a refund, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. So some of you may see an email come out in the near future that says, hey, we have a spot for a youth and an adult to go to DC if you know of anybody. So we're trying to avoid those things. So it kind of leads into Leadership Washington Focus. So the Citizenship Washington Focus is really for high school age students. And I know that they saw a real need for something for the younger group. So they did create a citizenship program for grades 7 through 9. It again is held at the National 4-H Center. In the past, they had offered 2 or 3 weeks of that event. This year, it's only 1 week in July. I'm guessing that they probably just didn't have enough students at all 3, so they decided to go back just to 1 week. It is really kind of presented as a precursor to CWF, and it has that focus of the lifelong civic empowerment and the engagement just for the younger age group. That one is a little bit cheaper. The cost, and these costs include air travel, extra rooms, some of those meals. Okay, it's only been 1 week. Okay, 1 year I remember it was 2 or 3 weeks, but that might have been a unique situation. But so LWF, with everything again is about $1,200 to $1,500. You may see an email saying we have an open spot. Okay, they can only attend each event only one time. Yeah. And I know I'll be able to tell you a lot more about LWF come August because I am taking Cody this summer to LWF. It's one of those, he really wants to go to DC, and I thought we're going to go for an educational trip through 4-H rather than through his school. So I just thought he'll get more education out of it. And so I think it's it is a good one to go to. I've heard good things about it. So and then there is what we call the Youth in Action Awards. And this is one I try to send out the information at least at the beginning of the year or when I get the information. I think we've had one, since I've been here, just 3 years, but we've had one person apply for the Youth in Action Award. Unfortunately, they were not selected, but what a great experience for them to go through this process. But what that does is it's a national award. It gives those young people a chance to share their story about how they've made a difference. There are 4 categories. There's agriculture, citizenship, healthy living, and STEM. And what they receive, if they are the winner in their pillar, so what they do is they go through and they select one person in each of the 4 pillars, and they receive a $5,000 scholarship, a customized promotional video. So National 4-H Council comes out and does a promotional video, professional video. They get a trip to the National 4-H Council Legacy Awards, which if you're not familiar with those, that's almost a once in a lifetime opportunity. They get to network with those 4-H celebrities. A couple of years ago, our national 4-H alumni award winner was Jennifer Nettles, who's a country singer with Sugarland. And, these kids, there's pictures of them. Last year, the alumni award winner was, not this past year, but the year before, was Audrey Plaza, who was a 4-H alum from Delaware. And if you're not familiar with Audrey, she was in Parks and Rec. She's in, I can't remember what the name of her new show is, very, very well-known actress. And then this last year it was somebody else, and they get to have one-on-one time with these people. So and at the event, at the Legacy Awards, we always get, our luminaries are there, and luminaries are Chef Ann Burrell and Carla, and I can't remember Carla's last name, from The Kitchen, and you've got Audrey Plaza comes every year. They get to meet all of these people. Great experience. And then they get that recognition. They become the official spokesperson for 4-H in that pillar area. Then from those 4 individuals, they select one award winner. And with that, they also get additional scholarships. And this last year, the National Award Youth in Service or Youth in Action Award winner was from Utah. So it's not, we've got kids that are just as good. We just need to promote it. That information is located on the National 4-H website. So I would, and again, I'll send that out. The next the next 2 are activities that we have not, I don't know if we've traditionally sent people to them, but I know we have not for a while. And I think it would be, if we've got young people that are interested, it would be a way to do it, or a way, another recognition. So there's a National 4-H Dairy Conference, and this is held in Madison, Wisconsin. It's held in conjunction with the World Dairy Expo. It's usually the last week of September, the first week of October. It is for young people for teens that are aged 15 to 19 that have shown outstanding achievement in dairy project, dairy foods, or the other one that isn't in here is dairy goat. They do offer a dairy goat. When I was in Idaho, our Idaho Dairy, or United Dairymen of Idaho, sponsored a trip for, I think, 4 youth or 5 youth every year. They sponsored the entire trip for them, and then 1 chaperone. And they would not, because they sponsored that trip, we did not have the dairy goat criteria, but that could be an option here in Nevada. And again, it's something we don't send delegates to, but if we had interest, we could start sending them to that conference. It's a great, the kids that went raved about it. They just loved it. So that's one to look into. Then we have the National 4-H Film Fest. This is a fairly new event, probably taken place within the last, I know it's the last 10 years. I think it's the last 5 or 6 years maybe that they've done this. It is a film festival. So when we have youth who, they create a film, or they create, I'm not sure exactly what all of the criteria. I know the films are the big ones, little short films. They create them and send them in, but then, they hold workshops and seminars and all kinds of things on, filmmaking, acting, visual art, stagecraft, digital media, special effects, makeup, all of those things they can learn about during this week. It is held in Columbia, Missouri, usually late August or late July, early August. I can't remember what the dates were for this year. Again, we don't send people, but I know I had a couple of counties, because they heard about it at the National 4-H Agents Conference. They were interested in thinking about it. Those counties that are starting to have photography classes, photography camps and those types of things, this might be a place for them to go. And so, this is, again, an opportunity that I wanted to make sure that people were aware of. And then, so there's also some, and so did I miss any national opportunities? I can't think of any others. I'm sure I did. I just can't think of what those are right now. I was on the national website looking, and I didn't see those. I know there's national judging trips, and I'll talk a little bit about those when I get into the state contests, but I can't think of any other national ones that I missed. We also have some opportunities for college-age students. So National 4-H Council every year does internships where the young people, where our college students go to Washington, D.C. and serve as program assistants at the National 4-H Center. So they may help with LWF, they may help with CWF, they may help with other programs that are going on. There's not only just 4-H that comes to National 4-H Center, there's lots of other schools and other programs that do things at the center. Currently, we actually have a former Kelsey that used to work in the state 4-H office is working back at the National 4-H Center. She works with CWF and LWF. So, we do have kind of an in there if we have anybody that's interested in some of these things. And then they get paid, but also they get to live at the National 4-H Center with other interns. And what a great opportunity. I've had a couple of students that have done that, a couple of college students, and they just, in fact, one of them got married and moved back to Washington, D.C. She loved it so much. Oh, Kelsey doesn't work there? Okay. She had just worked there like a couple months ago because we got some emails from her, but dang. But it is a great opportunity. Then there is, and then there's the website for that. Then there is the National Conference Facilitator, as I mentioned before. They typically will, they go with young people that have gone to conference, but that's not always the case. I've seen it where there's not 4-H, that. So they can help with those, help with conference. And then the collegiate 4-H, we are working on trying to get the collegiate 4-H back up and going in Nevada. I know I've had a couple of people offer to help with that. I just have got to get the time to get that up and going. I'd really like to get it started for the new 4-H year, or the new school year. So we are working on that. And then some of our state opportunities, this is the one that I'm hoping that I got. I tried, and I might be missing some. But we do have our State 4-H Ambassador Program up and going. I know Sharon helps with that. We have Lacey. We're going to be hiring somebody in the very near future to be working with that program. Currently, we do have 8 ambassadors. When they redid the criteria, they made a decision to have 15 state ambassadors. So we do have that program. You can see these are kind of some of their responsibilities. And we're still working on, again, that program is in its infancy. And so, as far as the redesign and the getting it up and going again. So we are working on that. The qualifications, we've got, you can see those qualifications. And then applications, we do applications once a year, and they're 2-year terms. We do have monthly meetings via Zoom, and we're trying to schedule, 1 or 2 face-to-face meetings for them each year, per year. Then there's 4-H Capital Days. We are getting that up and going again in 2019 during our legislative session. So this just explains the Capital Days. And then it is for youth 13 to 18. We are working on, Sarah, I pulled the dates. I think that you guys had decided March 10th and 11th in Carson for 2019. And so we're working, I know that Citizenship Committee is working on registration packets and trying to get those ready so that we can have those ready in October and really promote that and have them due back in January. So, so yeah, be looking for that information. We have 4-H camp. You know, we always have our 4-H camps in Tahoe, and I know there's several other counties that do their own, do camping in their own area. For the ones that come to Tahoe, we have the western or the northern area, and Sarah is typically the contact for that. The central area is Pam Powell this year, and then the southern area is Karen Best. So, you know, if you ever want to find out what they're doing there, that is, you know, there's that opportunity to do that. And then we have some state awards. I pulled 2 state awards that I know of. We have the Nevada Star Rank Award. This is, you can kind of see that. It's really for, you know, you can look at, it's an achievement award. And we do have, the application is on the State 4-H website. There are pins available for those awards. We do need probably at least 2 weeks of notice just so we can get them and get them shipped out in plenty of time. And so, or get them delivered to you in plenty of time. There's I think 4 rankings, 5 rankings, I can't remember, but all that information is on our state website. I wanted you to be aware of that. It's a great way to really promote that kind of that annual achievement. And then there's the horse levels, and this is one, each county kind of does this a little bit, or decides if they want to do this or not. It is supplement to the 4-H horse program. You can, you know, there's explanations. The website has all the information that you need. Currently, and this is something I need to visit with some individuals about, currently I think we only have 1 or 2 people that are certified to do the horse levels program, but we need to probably figure out a time to do some kind of training again to get more people certified. Again, I'm going to let you guys look at those, but we do have the information in the study guides, or what they need to study for it, are found on the website. Okay, did I miss any? I don't think I missed any awards. And then we have state contests. Right now, these are our state contests. And the American Beekeeping Essay Contest, that is one that young people can submit an essay to the state. We select a state winner and then send it on to the contest. I don't think we've had anybody participate in a number of years, and I'm not sure, I don't even remember getting the information this last year, but it is one I need to make sure when we do get that is sent out. We do have youth horse contests. Those include judging, hippology, I believe quiz bowl. Yeah, that's one. The American Beekeeping Essay Contest is one that a lot of people don't know about, but I wanted you to be aware of it. Okay, so yeah, so that would be great if we could have people. I will try to find that information, or if you just type in American Beekeeping Essay Contest, when a young person does apply or does at the national level, like the state winner, when we send it on, even if they're not selected as a winner, they still get some kind of, like, they get a book or they get something from the American Beekeeping Association. I can't remember. In Idaho, probably about 5 years ago, Idaho actually had the national award-winning essay. So it was kind of cool. Anyway, so state youth horse livestock or horse contest. Do you do a quiz bowl with that one, Sarah? I know there's hippology and I know there's judging, and I can't remember about quiz bowl, but that event does take place in August. It's the Washoe County event, essentially, okay, you've done it in the past. The Washoe County event serves as our state contest. So I know Sarah does share that information out with all of the other counties just to let them know that it is happening. You know, again, that may change in the near future when we look at a new model. Yeah, if there's interest, okay, good. State livestock contests, those just happened, and those again happened in August. The livestock contests happen typically in the spring. Right now, they happen in the spring. We do have skillathon, judging, and quiz bowl with those. So, you know, those are available. And then there is a state 4-H shooting sports match. And those, you know, that happens typically in September. This year it is September 29th in Las Vegas. And we have all of the disciplines. Young people can participate in 4 disciplines at the state level. So, and there are qualifying scores that the young person has to reach, and you know, we leave it up to the counties to really decide how that's going to happen. You know, it could be a county qualifying event, it could be the club level. So okay, yeah, and so we okay, so she's with Wild Pony. Okay, so she's switched jobs, darn it, from National 4-H. The National 4-H Center. But so back to the shooting sports match, you know, again, that's another event that they can do. And look for those qualifying scores that they need to get. I could not think of any other state contests. I wasn't sure about the Make It With Wool, if that was a contest in Nevada or not. And I didn't have time to investigate it as fully as I needed to, but that might be another one. So, and then leader opportunities, just to kind of round out. We do have state event chaperones. You know, we're going to need chaperones for camp. We'll need chaperones for Capitol Days. We need chaperones for all of those. Okay, good. I'm glad you're trying to bring it back, Sarah. We need to have the Make It With Wool contest. That's when kids sew garments with wool, and so used to be. Okay, so eventually, hopefully, we can get that back up and going. We always need chaperones for national events. I think, you know, usually with national events, we'll take staff or volunteers, or sometimes both. And then I don't know how many counties do leader anniversary recognition awards, like a 1-year pin, 2-year pin, 5-year pin, but that is an opportunity. You can order those from the national mall, the Shop 4-H, to do those. So, and we are trying to bring back some of those training opportunities. You know, we tried Forum, didn't work, so we're trying to figure out some other leader opportunities. So, can anybody think of anything that I forgot? Oops, let's stop sharing. So, okay, Washoe does 1, 3, 5, yeah. And they used to recognize that I took off the Western Regional Leaders Forum. And the reason I took that off of that slide is Western Regional Leaders Forum is going to go on hiatus for a couple of years while it's reevaluated for what it offers. What they found is there was only between 200 and 300 people going, which sounds like a lot of people, but that's not even, you know, we have 3,500 volunteers in Nevada. And so it's just being reevaluated. Yes, we have everything ready to go for the Leader of the Year. I had it ready to send out for the forum, and then with everything. So I'm trying to figure out when we could do Leader of the Year. And again, a lot of things are hinging on whether we bring back, which I think it's going to happen, bring back that Expo model. We can do the Leader of the Year, recognize that at Expo. So Yes, so that's my plan, is to bring that back at Expo. So, okay, recognize, okay, good. So they get them every year, but then they might get that certificate and those pins. So that's a good, those are good recognition way. As we talked about volunteer resources, that's another good one. But again, Western Regional Leaders Forum, we're not sure where that's going to go. So I did take it off, and we're, the volunteer specialists are working on that. And then, working with the staff. It's just one of those, it's the same 100 people, same 200 people that go every year. And then there is, a few in between that go once in a while. And the other thing we were finding is it was more staff a lot of times than volunteers. And so it just was, it's kind of run its course. We need to figure it out. So, all right. I don't think there's anything else. And I went over, I apologize. This one always tends to go over. The volunteer resources always tends to go over. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great weekend and a great rest of the week. So if there's anything I missed, send me an email and I'll get it put into the slideshow. So.